Contractors added to war's chaos in Iraq. Documents describe episodes in which private contractors or mercenaries killed civilians. The documents sketch in vivid detail a critical change in the way America wages war. The early days of the Iraq War, with all its Wild West chaos, ushered in the era of the private contractor, wearing no uniform, but fighting and dying in battle, gathering and disseminating intelligence, and killing presumed insurgents and many civilians. According to incident reports in an archive of more than 300,000 classified military documents made public by WikiLeaks, the use of security contractors is expected to grow as American forces shrink. A July report by the Commission on Wartime Contracting, a panel established by Congress, estimated that the State Department alone would need more than double the number of contractors it had protecting the American embassy and consulates in Iraq. Contractors, or mercenaries, were necessary at the start of the Iraq War because there simply were not enough soldiers to do the job. In 2004, their presence became the symbol for Iraq's descent into chaos when 4 contractors were killed in Fallujah, their bodies left mangled and charred. Even now, with many contractors discredited for unjustified shootings and a lack of accountability amply described in the documents, the military cannot do without them. There are more contractors overall than actual members of the military serving in the worsening war in Afghanistan. And that's bad. Why? Because they're not held to the same standards or accountability as the U.S. military, and in some kind of way is making more enemies. The archive, which describes many episodes never made public in such detail, shows a multitude of shortcomings with this new system. How a failure to coordinate among contractors, coalition forces, and Iraqi troops, as well as a failure to enforce rules of engagement that bind the military, endangered many civilians as well as the contractors themselves. The military was often outright hostile to contractors for being amateurish, overpaid, and very often trigger-happy. Contractors often shot with little discrimination and few, if any, consequences at unarmed Iraqi civilians, Iraqi security forces, even American troops and other contractors, stirring public outrage and undermining much of what the coalition forces were sent to accomplish in the first place, or so they say. And in Afghanistan, there have been so many abuses, including civilian deaths, even to the point that the Afghan government is working to ban many outside contractors entirely. The mayhem and chaos cropped up around Iraq, notably in one episode reported in March 2005, in which a small battle erupted involving 3 separate security companies at a notoriously dangerous checkpoint on the main road to the Baghdad airport. A cement truck entered a lane reserved for Department of Defense vehicles. A guard from Global, a British company, fired a warning shot, and when a man initially identified as an Iraqi opened the door and tried to flee, guards from a tower started firing too. The man dropped to the ground. Then, members of an Iraqi private security team parked nearby also opened fire, shooting to the chest, not the driver, but a worker from DynCorp International, an American security company. When the truck driver was finally questioned, he turned out to be a Filipino named Jose, who worked with yet a third company, KBR, the American logistics and security giant. So, the conclusion drawn from this chaos was, it is believed the driver entered the DoD lane by accident. For all the contractors' bravado, Iraq was packed with beefy men with beards and flak jackets, and for all the debates about their necessity, it is quite clear from the documents that the contractors appeared notably ineffective at keeping themselves and the people they were paid to protect from being killed. In fact, the documents seem to confirm a common observation on the ground during those years in Iraq. Far from providing insurance against sudden death, the easily identifiable, surprisingly vulnerable pickup trucks and SUVs driven by the security companies were magnets for insurgents, militias, disgruntled Iraqis, and anyone else in search of a target. In other words, this is all about chaos and confusion. And who is the author of chaos and confusion? Most of the documents are incident reports and match what is known of the few cases that have been made public, although even this cache is unlikely to be a complete record of incidents involving contractors. There have been many. During the 6 years covered by the reports, at least 175 private security contractors were killed. The peak appeared to come in 2006, when at least 53 died. Insurgents and other malefactors kidnapped at least 70 security contractors, many of whom were later killed. Aegis, a British security company, had the most workers reported killed, more than 30. Most of those were Iraqi drivers, guards, and other employees. Not only the military, but journalists and aid workers as well relied on contractors to help protect them. These security contractors, or mercenaries, seemed overmatched. Often incinerated or torn apart by explosions, their vehicles had no chance of warding off. In August 2004, the bodies of 2 men who had worked with Custer Battles were found charred and abandoned in a truck that was still burning after it was struck by an improvised explosive device and fired upon from a Volkswagen, one report said. In July 2007, another report said 2 were killed when a gun truck operated by Armour Group, a British company, flew like a wobbling discus 54 yards through the air, flipping approximately 6 times after a huge IED exploded beneath it in northern Iraq. And in May 2009, 3 Americans, including a senior Navy officer, were killed outside Fallujah when an IED overturned a vehicle escorted by Aegis contractors during a visit to a water treatment plant financed by the United States, according to another report and American government statements at the time. Death came suddenly from all sides and in all forms. In late 2004, 7 men emerged from 2 vehicles and mowed down Iraqi workers for Buckmaster, a company hired to destroy old munitions. As the workers got out of a bus, a report said, the gunmen did not flee until they ran out of ammunition, killing 17 and wounding 20 as 2 Iraqis saved themselves by hiding under seats in the bus. There were numerous suicide bombings, desert ambushes, aviation disasters, and even self-inflicted wounds, as when a Ugandan guard working for EOD Technology, an American company, shot and killed his South African supervisor, and then himself in 2008 after being terminated, another report said. A spokesman for EOD confirmed the incident and said that the investigation had been unable to determine why this particular guard decided to take the actions, but he did. In another case, in Baghdad in the summer of 2009, a British contractor with Armour Group was reported to have shot and killed 2 co-workers, a Briton and an Australian, then run wildly through the heavily fortified Green Zone in an attempt to escape. Finally, a coalition soldier tackled him, the report said, and another soldier shot a directed, aimed warning shot into sandbags, which immediately stopped resistance from suspect so that he could be brought under control. The alleged killer is still being held in Baghdad while awaiting trial under Iraqi law. The contractors also suffered horrific traffic accidents with multiple fatalities all over Iraq, seemingly as a side effect of driving at very high speeds on bad roads where a threat can appear at any moment. And the threats were not limited to insurgents. The documents show private security contractors repeatedly came under fire from Iraqi and coalition security forces, who often seemed unnerved by unmarked vehicles approaching at high speeds and fired warning shots, or worse. So, even as the war dragged on, there seemed no universal method for the military to identify these quasi-soldiers or amateur soldiers on the battlefield. And that too is very bad. To cope, the contractors were reduced to waving reproductions of coalition flags from inside their vehicles, the documents show, but even that did not always work. After being shot at by an American military guard tower in July 2005, contractors with Aegis first waved a British flag. When the shooting continued, the contractors, who said they were transporting a member of the American military at the time, held up an American flag instead. The tower kept shooting, a report said. But whatever the constellation of reasons, from war zone jumpiness to outright disregard for civilian lives, the security companies are cited time after time for shootings that the documents plainly label as unjustified. This has blackened their reputation, even if it has not lessened the military's dependence on them. After the IED strike, a witness reports the Blackwater employees fired indiscriminately at the scene. Read one report from August 22, 2006, referring to the company, now known as XE Services, that the following year would become notorious for an apparently unprovoked killing of 17 Iraqis at Nassau Square in Baghdad. And yes, this is a tarnish on the reputation of the U.S. military, an extreme tarnish. And all these are more signs of the times. Revelation chapter 10. And I saw another mighty angel or archangel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head. His face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. 2. And he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot on the earth. 3. And cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roars. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. 4. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. 5. And the angel, or archangel, which I saw, stand upon the sea, and upon the earth, lifted up his hand to heaven. 6. And swore by him that lives for ever and ever, who created heaven, and the things that therein are, and the earth, and the things that therein are, and the sea, and the things which are therein, but there should be time no longer. 7. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. And these are more signs of the end times, transition days. Everything that must change quickly or rapidly, and for the better. And there are many different kinds of signs happening daily all around the world.